All right. This is what is the old take two, right? The take two thing.
There was so much good content
I
that
tell
was
you,
lost.
I mean, we literally, I say we talked for, was it 20 minutes?
At least. That is lost
It's been
for eternity.
so, well, what I'm going to trust is there was something stupid that we said in there. I said something stupid, and guy was just trying to.
I was thinking you said something.
Well, did I say something insensitive or dumb? Oh my goodness. So yeah, no, we literally talked for like 20 minutes and then realized when I looked up at the screen, I'm like, wait a second. Why is it not showing me how long we've been recording? Oh, well, all the smart, witty things that I said, I want to make sure I remember all those. Nope. I don't think there were any. So the skin of cat. We talked about skinning cats.
We should redo that conversation.
I feel so dumb. I feel so dumb sitting here after talking about all this stuff and then having to rehash all of it. I think, what?
See, I think a good friend, like when you say that, like I feel so dumb. A good friend says, "Yeah, you should." No,
it's funny because that's exactly. One of the things I was going to say that I hadn't said before is a friend can get away with telling you the hard truth.
Yeah,
you don't. So we'll back up. You know, forget the skin of the cat. That was just kind of silly and witty. But we're talking about friendship. We were talking about what makes good friendships. How did you and Nicole and Brandy and me? How did we become friends over the last 25 years? What tied us together? What bound us together? We had started out, and I really liked this part of the conversation because I think it's really valuable for friendships. We were talking about having common phases of life or having common life, I don't know.
Experiences.
Yeah. So we got to know each other when we were young adults and we didn't have kids yet. We were newly married. I think you guys had been married a year or so and we had just gotten married very, very recently. So, I also was talking about the couples that I see that don't have a group around them of people with a common phase of life, common interests, and I feel sorry for that. I feel bad that there's couples that don't have a pool to really to choose friendships from, or kind of at least to just kind of naturally be inclined towards certain people. Yeah, and I know I'm not articulating. I was articulating it so much better before, but anyway, yeah.
I think one thing we didn't talk about, so this is kind of new territory, and it's unique to pastoring. So
good.
You know, we can have.
Is it something that a pawnbroker can relate to?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
A pawnbroker can opine on it. Effectively.
Go for it.
But I don't ever remember like a professor or someone in like a teaching mode ever saying this outright, but I have had other pastors say, you know, essentially don't develop friendships within your congregation.
Oh, wow.
Or at least be highly cautious of friendships within your congregation. And then
that sounds terribly lonely.
Yeah. Well, and then also, you know, like if you transition to another church, you know, or other things, that, you know, it's important to cut the relationships with the previous and not continue to foster those relationships or other things. And that's not been the approach for Ryder, you know, I think for good, but it's not been the approach that Nicole and I have taken just because it doesn't line up with Scripture to us. You know, it doesn't line up with, I don't see anything in Scripture that says that.
Yeah.
And I do think for pastoring, and I don't know if there's any other pastors that might listen to the podcast, but I think you have to build relationships with people, and churches have to accept that just as Jesus was connected in some ways with 3 more than he was to the 12 and more than he was to the 120 or the 3,000, you know, if we would broaden it out like that, you know, pastors need relationships to be able to build relationships with people in a good way, and it's actually healthy because it lets people in to understand, the weaknesses and the strengths and other things of a pastor. And I think I would say how I feel about it is there is some responsibility for people who are friends of pastoral leaders, to be judicious in what they talk about to others and other things. And that's been our experience. I mean, I've never felt betrayed by a friend, someone who I genuinely considered a friend within the church. It has always been a blessing in ministry everywhere I've gone.
Yeah.
To have key relationships, key friendships with people while also fostering other relationships. It doesn't mean that I'm not fostering other relationships.
Yeah.
But from a pastor's perspective, I think it's important to maybe go against the conventional wisdom that says don't get close to people.
Yeah.
Within your congregation, have friendships elsewhere. I've actually found it to be a good benefit to build friendships within the congregation.
And that's, I would say, not just for you, but I was thinking about, because we're both married to stay-at-home moms who educate our children, that can be a really lonely role.
Yeah.
If you don't have friends. And I know it's funny because it doesn't happen as often as they would probably like, but when the women who are close to Brandy get together for a dinner some evenings, and they'd only do, good grief, they probably only do it 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
But when they do, I'm always like, I hope that she's home late. I hope she's home late. I hope they stay and shut the place down, the restaurant where they go. And they always do. Normally they do. Because I think that there are certain really tough roles in life. A stay-at-home mom who's educating her children, that's a really, really hard role.
Yeah.
And so friendship is absolutely vital. And that's where friendship with others who can kind of, I don't want to say commiserate, because commiserate's the wrong word, but at least empathize and understand what, how that can feel like a thankless job sometimes. And really, so I think that's the way we relate to each other, not just with the period of life that we're in, but even our roles, like what we do. And people could say, what do a preacher and a pawnbroker have in common? How has this friendship formed? Well, we're both Christians, husbands, fathers, and we want to do life well. And so I think those things probably bind us together more strongly than our occupation does.
Well, I don't think our occupations are too.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, people come into your shop because they have a need. You try to help.
You're gonna get into trouble here.
People come to church oftentimes. They have needs.
Yeah.
I try to help. There is some similarities. Yeah. I mean, if you take you can look at the actual logistics of a business versus a church, and we've talked about that some.
Yeah.
But I think, most Christians, I mean, you could compare pastoring to a lot of different things. And I don't want to ever hold pastoring out as some totally different thing than everybody else, and we ought to, revere it in a different way.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point.
I think it has some unique, I would say, I think it does have some unique burdens. I mean, I feel a burden that I don't feel like I bear well, and that I probably need, help from friends to better understand. But, I feel a burden that when I'm preaching, the sense is, I'm impacting, or I can impact someone's eternal perspective or eternal destiny or other things. And again, I'm not saying other professions and other ways don't do that, but I'm not saying that I have control over someone's eternal destiny. I'm just saying I could misspeak and impact, or I could speak in the right way. And there's a burden, those kind of burdens I think are somewhat unique to pastoring, but in terms of, a lot of the logistics, it's not much in a lot of different ways. I think sometimes pastors try to make it completely different, and that's not very helpful.
Do you think friendships, and I think about, okay, so young people who are in the same classroom, it's almost like they're shoved together.
Yeah.
And friendships just kind of, are they chosen, or is it totally random, or do we choose our friends? Are friendships mostly just a function of who we're around? Is it a little bit of both? Is there a way to, because I think about young people, like I think about my daughter just graduated high school, and she was with 3 boys as a preschooler, literally in classical conversations, our cooperative, the exact same 3 boys she graduated with a few weeks ago.
Wow.
And so 4 of them, 3 boys, 2 twin brothers, another young man, and they were little boys when they started. And my daughter went through their entire schooling, cooperative schooling like that. It was only 1 day a week, but their experience has always been together, these 4. And so while there's definite friendships there, that's a different kind of friendships than the friendships we choose, but they're still friendships. I mean, but do you think friendships are best chosen or forced, or I don't know. I mean, how do we, because I think about young people who maybe lack friendships, who don't have enough, and I think, what encouragement will we give them about finding friends? I mean, true friends, because what a friend does is, we talked about this before we were recording, but is not splatter each other all over all over Twitter, which is what we're seeing from Elon and Trump, which is insanity. And just try to tear each other down to the point where you make each other look stupid. And no one comes out clean.
Yeah.
It's like watching 2 women mud wrestle. If you remember mud wrestling, when we were, that whole mud wrestling thing, it's like watching 2 people throw mud all over each other and pitch each other in the mud.
Yeah.
Obviously friendship is not that. That's not friendship. So how do we encourage young people to find friends, choose friends, that would be lifelong friends?
Yeah.
Obviously
some people are more social than others, so it's easier for some to just, open up and connect in friendships easier. I think there are seasons of life. For instance, I look back and I think, my college years. I don't have, besides, if you consider my wife, but my wife is, from college, that's the only relationship that I can think of that I've really maintained, after all these years. And so there's a lot of friendships that you cultivate for a few years and then they fade for whatever reason. Life circumstances change them. But I do think there are some friendships that are important enough that you sense a need to try to continue to cultivate them, keeping in touch, being available at key times. Again, it doesn't mean that you're there all the time and that you're connected all the time. Sometimes it may be connecting every couple of months if you live apart.
Yeah.
But those friendships are able to pick up very quickly.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing. So I think sometimes it is related to season of life, and we should be open to new friendships. And as we've talked about before, I think there is a capacity. I mean, I don't know what that number would be,
right?
But there is a capacity to strong, lasting friendships, I think, because you can only maintain so many relationships.
Yeah.
But I think looking for people who have similar values, particularly as for Christian men, I think accountability is a big thing.
Yeah.
Men can tend to isolate.
Right. And so looking for someone who will ask you the hard questions when they need to be asked.
Yeah.
Look at you and speak truth to you. That's the other thing too, I think, is it's just having... You think there's something different about looking someone in the face and speaking truth to them, or calling them out on Twitter or Facebook, right? Sometimes we think, oh yeah, well, I'm just giving them the hard truth when people are making comments on Facebook about it. And that's obviously not a friend. That's not what a friend does. Friends don't call each other out in public.
Yeah.
But I think, speaking the hard truth to a friend is or the good truth, or just speaking truth to a friend. One of the things that I think about that I don't take it lightly or think that it's something. I wonder how common it is. People say it a lot, but my best friend is obvious. Well, I wouldn't say obviously. Maybe it's not obvious. If it's not been made obvious here, my best friend is my wife.
Yeah.
And that's because she knows me better than anyone, and she chooses to stay with me. I mean, and you think about that. She knows me better than anyone on earth, and she still wants to do life with me. And I think, wow, now that is someone.
That's a friend.
That is a friend. That is a friend because you know me well enough that I'm not always easy. And the fact that she's seen the less easy parts of me than you've seen, and she still chooses to do life with me. I feel bad for, I really do. I feel for people who don't have that in their marriage.
Yeah.
That's someone that, the one thing though, I think I was going to say, like, contrary to Elon and Trump, is that's a distinction I see in marriages where I see true friendships and their close relationships in a marriage is they don't call each other out or they would never make each other look bad in public to each other, like in front of anyone else.
I think it's really when, obviously, I think we've talked about this before, but someone referring to their wife as like, oh, my old lady or, whatever, I told you woman, that kind of stuff. I just like, it just grates on me. I mean, I can see a joke or whatever. I get it. But
even a joke,
I
would say, I would say
just,
no, because here's the thing: is you think, why would you even? It's almost like a YouTube video of a guy riding a skateboard down a railing. You're like, okay, there's only a few people that are gonna get down this railing with a skateboard without it ending badly, and why would you even risk it?
Right?
Why even do it? It's like, well, this may not be a great analogy, but I'm just saying it's really dangerous when you're, skirting with that joking.
Yeah. And it puts a negative, like if we're talking about the friendships with our spouses, it puts a negative on my wife. And I don't ever want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want people to ever perceive, even in a humorous way, something negative about my wife.
What do you think that translates to friends then, like guys with each other?
I think guys like to pick on one another.
There's a video. Have you seen the video of me crossing the mud puddle on my motorcycle?
I saw that. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that video. My mom says she shared with so many people. She shared.
I think your mom was the one who shared it with me.
And because what it is me basically diving into a mud, and I find the perfect rut that just eats my entire motorcycle almost, and I'm up to my waist almost in mud, and I'm going through this mud, and Tom is next to the person videoing, and he is Tom, my brother, and one of my best friends, is just cracking up laughing, can't help but just laugh hysterically. And I could have been frustrated. Here's the thing, and this is the good friend. I could have been frustrated, and I could have been angry, but hearing Tom in my helmet, like we have comms on, hearing Tom in my helmet just cracking up, I couldn't help but do anything but laugh. And I come out of the other end of the mud
Which is the best thing to do.
Just cracking. And I would say that's a good friend. A good friend knows when to laugh at his friend and knows when to do it in a way that will be received by his friend as, hey, you better start laughing at yourself because this is funny.
Yeah.
That's the thing about just knowing each other, understanding each other.
Yeah, I think I think that's a distinction. Like, for instance, if Brandy were on the other side, I could see her laughing at you.
Right. Yeah, I think she would.
And I think there is a distinction there. I think there's another.
But she would consider it first. Tom didn't even think about it. He just couldn't help but laugh. Oh. She would say, well, if I laugh, is he going to be upset? Yeah.
No, I know Tom didn't think about it.
Yeah, no, he couldn't help it. Yeah.
I think, you think of, particularly with guys, I think that's just part of how you relate to one another.
Yeah.
But there is a limit. You gotta know when it's just kind of friendly banter, and then when it's kind of you're actually putting someone down and kind of making them feel small or something like that. I mean, you have to.
Was that a short joke? Was it? I saw that one coming. Making them feel small. I heard you. See?
I don't even think of you as short.
Sit up. I don't think of myself as short either. It's funny because people ask me that about being short. I'm like, oh, I'd forgotten. I'm short. Yeah, no, I don't mind short jokes as long as I'm the one telling them. I think friendship is one of those things that I've always taken for granted, in all honesty, until I go back and look and say, oh, I guess I did something intentional there, or maybe it was just accidental, or maybe I just been blessed with good people around me that I really found, and maybe it's because I'm an extrovert kind of naturally that I've been able to form friendships. And I wonder if some people say, well, easy for you to say, Toby, you're an extrovert. Easy for you to say about forming friendships with people. You're gonna. I mean, but the truth is, one of the things that's been a problem for me over the years is with friendships is probably the fact that I talk over people. I tend to talk over people sometimes, and I'm a little bit too much, or have been when I was younger. And so I think there's extroverts and introverts. What's the challenges? I mean, I'll speak as an extrovert, and say the biggest challenge of an extrovert is not being overbearing, knowing when to shut up and listen. So I'll shut up and listen. What do you think about? I mean, I don't know if you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert, but
when I've taken those things, I'm kind of right on the line.
Yeah,
you know? And I've had to learn to be more socially extroverted.
Yeah,
you know, just because of where my profession lies. But there's pluses and minuses to both of that. I mean, I think when I have a friend that I know is an extrovert, like I know they're going to be talking and processing out here.
Right.
You know, they're thinking their thoughts out here
that's really
instead of
funny
in
you
here.
say that. Yeah.
You know, and so it doesn't bother me. I think that's just part of the friendship. You're like, oh, like, and in some ways, I actually think like if I'm having people over to my house or something like that, like I'm thankful for an extrovert to be in the room.
Yeah.
Because they're going to help carry the conversation. I don't have to think about it. I mean, you know, there's times like if it's in a Bible study or something like that, I'm like, oh yeah, Toby's going to be there. It will have a conversation.
It'll flow. There'll be something. You know, even if he's talking to himself.
That's a very positive thing. And I think for someone who is more introverted, I think what they may say may, you know, when it finally comes out, may kind of be maybe a profound statement or something because they've been processing it and thinking it through and all that, and that's important and good. But it takes both, and I think you shouldn't necessarily surround yourself with everybody like you. You know, I mean, it pulls you out. Like if
I couldn't stand to be around people like me. That'd make me crazy. Sorry, go ahead.
You know, I think it's good. It's good to have differences in your life. For an introvert, sometimes you can live within yourself so much and be okay with that. You know, I don't really need a lot of friendships. I don't, you know, it doesn't excite me that much. And, but I think from a biblical perspective, it's important to be known. You know, at some point you want to be known deeply by a few other people.
Yes.
And be accepted by that. Otherwise, I think you always wrestle with the fact that if people really knew me, would they accept me?
Yeah.
And so even for someone who kind of processes inwardly, I think to try to build some significant relationships with people where you learn and develop an ability to be open with a few people who really know you.
Yeah.
To where you don't get to the end season of life and think, I've lived 50, 60, 70 years and no one's really got close enough to know me. That's sad.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I know, and I don't remember if it was when we didn't record and we had the conversation or we talked about our wives going out a couple times a year.
Yeah.
Was that, which conversation was that?
On this one.
Was that this one or the
Maybe.
last one? I can't remember. We recorded for so stinking long not recording. No, but I was just thinking about Brandy in particular because she's on the introverted side. And I think about who her close friends are. And the truth is, Brandy's one of these people that over the years, there have been many people that I would bet would say that Brandy's a great friend, but Brandy doesn't really think about them as a close friend because she listens and listens and listens. And there's so many people that just, and not a bad thing, but it's people that process to her or with her because she listens. And so it's interesting that a lot of those people I've heard kind of made comments over the years about how sweet Brandy is and she's a good friend and things. But the people that Brandy would say are her friends are the ones that she spent time with, at a restaurant a few times a year until they kick them out, and everybody gets a chance to talk and share, and she gets a chance to share. Because I think, is it possible to have a friend or feel like you have a friend if you've never shared with them? Which is an indictment on me sometimes, and I've had to learn over the years, is Toby, if you're not going to shut up and listen, you're probably not going to have people that consider you a friend.
Yeah, but this isn't a therapy session for you, but but I've just noticed you become very intentional about that. You stop and listen. And I mean, obviously, your personality is what your personality is, and that's for all of us.
Yeah.
But we learn how to navigate. If you're self-aware, which a friendship can make you self-aware.
Yeah, that's true.
You can, like a friend would say, "Hey, can I get this out?" Or
that's right. Can you shut up for a second?
Can you hear me out here or something like that? A friend could say that, and over time you're going to think, okay, I realize my personality is different. I need to stop and let them process this.
Yeah.
Because even when that person's not moving at the speed with which maybe an extrovert would move.
Yeah.
And so I think someone who is self-aware is able to make those adjustments while not squashing their personality.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that either, but to be willing to say, to learn someone else, and to know more about this person, then I'm going to stop and listen. And maybe for me, it'll be a little awkward, but they're processing and thinking that's going to come out. And I'll be glad that they shared with me some things that they were thinking inside. So
have you ever heard this? I'm not sure where it comes from, but this kind of model of how a lot of women become friends face to face, and a lot of men become friends, or friendships develop shoulder to shoulder. Like, you think about strong friendships with men, military. I assume that's definitely some kinships I've seen. And those are, it's almost like a brotherly kind of bond with military guys who are on mission together, doing something together, shoulder to shoulder, side by side. And then you think, versus face to face, like talking with each other face to face. Is there anything to that with genders in particular, with women kind of talking it out with each other and men kind of working together for common purpose? Do you think that's a friendship? I don't even know what you would call a catalyst to friendships, or is it? Is that a commonality you think? Or
well, I think it's how God has created men and women differently.
Yeah.
And women are have a much easier time sharing the emotional side of things than men do. And I think where it comes out with men is when we're doing what God created us to do, which is working and providing. And, when you could even say, defending.
Yeah.
You look at
being on mission together.
David and Jonathan. Both soldiers, both warriors.
Yeah.
Had a very, very deep friendship.
Yeah.
And I think some of that was because they knew what each other, what it took to be who they were. They were both kind of Jonathan kind of in a royal line, David being anointed.
It's an interesting story. Yeah,
warriors. And both of them, seemingly seeking to follow after the Lord.
Yeah,
but
but definitely laying down, Jonathan in particular, laying down his own interests. For the interest of his friend.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Laying down his princely kind of role, understanding who David was and who he would be.
I think that's an interesting, it'd be an interesting study because Jonathan really could have gone after power. I mean, he could have made it very difficult for the transition to another, a totally different family from the lineage of Saul. Jonathan was, according to everyone else, he was the rightful heir.
Yeah.
But he understood what was happening and what God was doing and was willing to see himself in a different light and see God's work in David and actually help David, fulfill what God had called him to do.
I think it's obviously an interesting and kind of formative kind of role that friends play that makes strong friendships is laying down my own interests for somebody else.
Yeah.
Making sure that I want you to be better. So I'm going to do whatever I can to help you be better.
Yeah.
I think it's obviously a distinction with the stuff flying around on X right now, with that friendship. We talked about before we started recording. We talked about the fact that that's not real friendship. That's obviously not real friendship. That's some kind of power relationship that was done. The ability for them to leverage each other and kind of climb up this power ladder together, seemingly.
Yeah.
Eventually, it became competitive.
Yeah.
And it all falls apart. And it's obviously that can't be what a friendship is built on, is using each other to kind of climb this. I don't know. I mean, I think it's different. It's trying to elevate each other.
I'm not saying that every friendship in the world is like that, but that's what a genuine worldly worldview leads you to.
Yeah.
It's
Using
survival of
each
the
other.
fittest. I'm using you to get what I need, so I'm the most, fit in this particular area. And again, I don't think that's a universal. Everyone who's not a Christian doesn't use people, in their friendships, but that is a natural working out of a worldly worldview with regards to friendships. And I think, as friends, as people who've been friends for a long time, but then also just from a biblical perspective, is that the gospel comes to bear on how we should treat one another in these lasting, important friendships, Whereas someone in the world like Trump and Musk, they don't think about how does the gospel bear on this friendship?
Yeah.
I mean, I think,
I'm pretty sure they're not talking about that or thinking about that.
Whereas I think when you're in the church and you're developing friendships, I think we have to think that how does the gospel bear? And the other thing is it gives you an opportunity to offer some real genuine hope during difficult circumstances, whether that is, going through trials, whether that is unexpected, events in your life or whatever. A Christian friend is actually able to offer some genuine solace from the word of God to another friend.
I think about the term. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think about the term fair weather fan.
Yeah.
Fair weather fan. It's the people that all of a sudden the Washington Commanders are having a great year, and all of a sudden you see Washington Commander flags all over the Redskins. By the way, I still say Redskins, but you see them flags everywhere, and everybody's jumping on board. And you're thinking, okay, that's not a real fan, Yeah. But then it's funny because you think about like the Detroit Lions, if they have a good year, and you're like, and people say, no, I was a Detroit Lion fan when they were 1-15 and 0-16, right? I went through them when they were nothing. I went through with them when they were nothing and did nothing. And you think there's something to be said for friendships being built on or strengthened by hard times.
Yeah.
Hard times, pain. What do you think? How big a factor does that play in strong friendships? The hard time and the pain.
I think it's huge. I have been a Baltimore Orioles fan, and they haven't won a World Series since 1983.
Yeah, it's been a while.
But I think sticking through difficult journeys as much as we can is very important because it's
fortifying, I think.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. I think that's a really good word. It helps to fortify the friendship. And it also builds trust. for future
Yeah.
vulnerabilities that come to play. And I think that is the beauty of friendship over a long haul, is that there is this kind of give and take and being vulnerable. I'm going to share some things with you. And I think we all kind of think, well, can this be used against me, or am I comfortable with this person where it won't be, thrown on Twitter
Right.
or other things. And I think as that trust relationship bears out, you actually it's a blessing over years of time to be able to count on that as a place, again, to kind of be known in a deeper way than just a surface level. We, go out and have dinner or go to a game or go whatever,
I think I'm remembering having this conversation before, or some aspect of this conversation before on this podcast. And I was just thinking about, how do you encourage people to be a good friend? Like, what do you say to somebody who says, I would like to have some long-term lifelong friendships? Because I think everyone should have some. You should have some friendships that last for decades. And I think if you don't, you're really missing something in life. What if someone says, I would love to have a friendship that would last for decades? Are there any specific things that you would say to someone that desires that? Whether it's a married couple who wants to, and a married couple that wants to be able to have another married couple as like kind of a, is there any secret sauce to having great long-lasting friendships?
Obviously, my first response is going to be the gospel.
The
gospel to bear on those friendships.
A solid foundation
that you're kind of having a similar worldview. But I also think you got to pursue it in some ways.
Yeah, you
can't just be kind of a wallflower, or if there's no one in your sphere. So if there's no one in my sphere that I feel like I can't be friends with anybody in my sphere, there's no one that's kind of, then I probably have to look internally a little bit.
Yeah.
And think, okay, there's probably something within me that's preventing some of these, because it should develop somewhat organically.
Yeah. I was going to say organic is important.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't force everything.
But I think when the germination starts and you start to see something to grow, I think, you got to water it some. You got to give it some sunlight some. And I think trying to pursue those relationships and not being, not necessarily being flippant, but if someone's got character qualities and, there's a foundation that you're building on, and you see, then I think that's a real, even, and I'm kind of qualifying that kind of in the same sex, where you're, a man who's pursuing a relationship.
Yeah.
I want to be careful.
I
frame that, but a friendship with another man, or a
Yep.
woman who's preferring a friendship with another woman. Obviously, there's different dynamics when you're pursuing someone for a husband or wife.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at, someone who is, you're looking as a David Jonathan friendship, I think you've got to exert some energy.
Yeah.
To make that be what helps it to be fruitful in the long run.
Be a friend, right?
Be a friend.
To have a friend, you have to be a friend.
Be vulnerable.
Even that, I mean, I think we say those things, and I don't know that they necessarily resonate the same way they did when I was a kid. What the friend was is the people on the playground. There's no playgrounds anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no playgrounds anymore. Think, when's the last time you saw a bunch of kids on a playground?
Yeah.
I don't know that I have seen a play. I mean, like, I made friends on the playground, and you think, okay, I don't know that there is that there is a. And I'm just the first time this is kind of coming that I'm kind of realizing this, that we don't have playgrounds for the most part anymore, where kids are just having to be together and play together on pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
Figure out how to do that in a community and do it in a cooperative way. And you think there's not really that. I don't know that there's Minecraft. Let's build something together. I'm sorry. I'm critical of Minecraft. But like a playground where we have to come together and figure out, okay, we're going to play kickball together.
Yeah.
We're going to have to figure out teams. We're going to work together for we're going to do this or we're going to get on the merry-go-round and one person has to push while the other people, and then another person has to push. Or what do we have with our children that teaches them, hey, to have friends, I have to be a friend. I have to cooperate in this community where we do things together.
When we were on vacation in Florida, there was where we stayed. There was a little pool area, like the complex had a little pool area with a lazy river and some other things in there. And Claire, my youngest daughter, she was in the lazy river, and there was a little girl from I don't know if it was New Zealand or somewhere like that.
Oh,
like
wow, with a cool accent.
Yeah, that came up to her and was like, will you be my friend? And, so Claire was like, yeah, so they started kind of doing some stuff together. But it was kind of humorous when Claire was telling me, she's like, she asked me to be her friend, so I had to be her friend, And,
is there any...
But...
that model of saying, will you be my friend? Do you think there's any... I mean, she put herself out there.
Right.
And you think, and that's a little girl that said, hey, I'm just going to ask the tough question. Will you... And what she meant by that was, will you play with me? Will you make an agreement? Will you make an agreement to spend some time with me and play with me? And I think that is, to be a good friend, I think we have to put ourselves out there. We have to say, hey, you want to hang out and do something together? There's one person in my life in particular that he is so good at reaching out, and I feel like I'm a terrible friend because Carlos, if you know Carlos, he just reaches out. He's so good at saying, hey, I've been praying for you and thinking about your family, and and I think that's what it takes to be a good friend, right? Is to reach out and put yourself out there, right?
Yeah. And when you see those characteristics within someone, be willing to not be so busy that you just run over. You don't think about it and don't appreciate it.
Yeah, because that's probably the kind of person that you want to be a friend with.
Yeah.
Is the person that's going to say, "Hey, I'm going to make some effort." Because guess what? When you're feeling like crap, when life has beat you up, I'm going to be the one that's going to say, "Hey, you need someone to hang out with you."
Yeah.
No, I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, you need someone to hang out with you. Hey, you life's kind of beating you up. Hey, I'm going to put a desk in my office, and I want you to come hang out with me in my office. Sorry. But no, you need someone that is going to just keep on knocking on your door.
And that, again, is the benefit of long-term relationships.
Yeah.
If I'm not cultivating a long-term relationship, like, I can't tell when you're off. I can't tell when there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Even without you saying. And so I think if I've not cultivated that long-term relationship, and particularly for men, I think you got to try to get a little bit vulnerable with somebody so that when you're passing that person in church or at work or, in the store or whatever, and they say, hey, how you doing? And you respond, they're quick to pick up, hey, something's not right here. Are you sure you're okay? You want to talk? You want to go, whatever. That kind of friendship is important.
Yeah.
And I think for men particularly, because we tend not to maybe want to share like all the inner workings of what we're thinking, but we probably need to more than what we do. Yeah.
It's interesting. I actually heard I don't know if it was a psychologist or someone recently interviewed, and he said, it's funny. We think that all those things are superficial. Hey, how you doing? I'm good. Right? We think that they're just some social kind of grease that we just use and they don't mean anything and it doesn't do it. He said it's exactly the opposite. When we do that with each other, especially when you do it with friends or something, hey, how's your day going? And they say, oh, yeah, I can tell really quickly the way you just responded to me, what's happening in your world. And it's because I've spent enough time and heard you say it enough times. We've said those things to each other. Hey, how's your day going? And I've heard it from you 1,000 times. And then I can pick up, oh, okay, I can tell he's stressed out, or I can tell, he's tired or whatever. And I think it's important. And that's again, the long term is really important. And that's why husbands and wives, if you're doing it right, those little cues you get, and then you realize, oh, I need to
I can make eye contact with Nicole across the room.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
You're communicating.
Yeah.
You're
My kids always thought it was funny.
Yeah.
We could talk, and they're like, "Wait, did you just say something to each other?" And I was like, "Yeah, we did." And they're like, What'd you say? What did he?" And she's like, "I got it." And they're like, "Nuh-uh, you didn't get it. You don't know what she." I'm like, "Yeah, we spent enough time together. I can say something to her across the room just by looking at her, and she knows exactly what I'm saying." And I think that's well, it's not just husbands and wives. I think there are times where we really need people that, I think of Job. I think of Job, and I think we give them such a hard time. One of them name was Tobiah, right? Tobiah was one of them. And then I've always kind of related to him. But we give them such a hard time. And I think maybe, did we bring this up last time? I can't remember. Job is in the pit of despair, right? He's at his, the end. He's everything around him except for his lovely wife he's lost. And even his health, he's sitting there scraping himself with clay, pieces of pottery, because he has boils all over his skin, and which is just a disgusting image. And he's sitting there in misery, and his friends show up. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting what they do. They sit there for an entire, is it days?
It's
like 7 days. They sit with him in silence and just kind of weep with him and kind of just sit there and be with him. And I think, wow, those are friends that didn't start talking to him immediately. And the things that we criticize, the things they eventually say. But I think those are friends that knew that Job just needed someone next to him. He just needed someone next to him. And I think
they showed up.
Yeah, they showed up. And that's a good point. Showing up is what, that's a real friend. And
even
friend
though
shows up.
Even though their advice was not maybe what we would hope it would have been or could have been, at the end, Job's given the opportunity to pray for him and to see him, encouraged through those prayers. And so there's definitely value in that. But I do think, there in that situation, there's points for just showing up.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. Well, I don't know if I've said it before, but I'll say it here publicly, that you and Nicole have been great friends to Brandy and me over the years. I'm really thankful. I'm not just thankful for your friendship. I'm really thankful that my wife has someone that she knows. And here's the thing is, we don't always lean on each other. We're not always with each other. We don't spend nearly as much time as we'd like to together, because we're raising families and doing jobs and doing everything, doing life. But it's nice to know that if I need someone to lean on, I've got it. And I'm really, really thankful to know that Brandy has someone that she would feel comfortable with sitting down and listening to her, right?
Well, we feel the same way. And it's been a great blessing. And again, it's an unexpected blessing and I would go back to the foundation of the gospel.
Yeah.
That is what has helped this friendship to be a long-term friendship.
Yeah.
Is the grace of the gospel.
Yeah. Amen. Well, thank you.
Yep.
We recorded that one. I see. That's good.